Welcome to the Tapestry of Life. I am Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services at Community College of Philadelphia. Today's topic is adolescent sexuality. Adolescent sexuality is sexual feelings and behavior that is considered an integral part of adolescent development. Sexuality and virginity is often a vital aspect of teenagers' lives. Today, to talk about this topic, I want to welcome back my co-host, Renee Norris-Jones, and my two special guests, Dominic Anglin, I think?
Anglin.
And
Anglin.
Anglin, excuse me. And Caitlin King. Well, there's my very brief introduction that I do on the topic. I was kind of curious when I was thinking of the topic. I actually went and Googled some of the ideas just to make sure that I had a sense of what was going on. But I was wondering from your perspective, because you're both young, I think you're in your early 20s, if I'm without giving away your ages too much, and I know you're college students, so I was interested in your perspective on kind of growing up. I don't know who might want to start.
Well, I mean, we've grown up in a society that is heavily saturated with sexuality and sex in media, and it's something that's kind of unavoidable. But one of the things that you don't realize is that as a child, you may not know what sex is or what your sexuality is, and there's a lot being thrown at you without anyone telling you the actual information. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of one of those things where you grow up in a society that has a lot of sexual, a sexuality to it, but no one's going to explain it to you or tell you what it is or tell you how to do it safely. And I think that it causes a lot of issues internally for kids growing up nowadays.
Sure. I often thought that people, when they talk about sexuality, they don't make it broad enough. As an adolescent, I assume that there are components to it about your maleness and your femaleness, so to speak, or your masculinity and your femininity, and people always want to kind of almost keep them separate. But in reality, I almost feel that they're confluent. They tend to run together, and the definition of what you believe you are is really almost a combination of the cultural stereotypes and stigmas that exist. I mean, at least that's what I remember growing up. Am I a man? Am I a man? What's going on? And I'm not, sometimes I would say, gee, that doesn't sound like a good thought to me. And I had no one to ever clarify it with me, my family. It was like a taboo topic. You never really talked about it.
I think that's something that's common with most of us through the generations, that sex was not talked about. And as far as society where it is now, mm-hmm. I remember when I grew up, I was born in the late 50s, so when I grew up, it was Archie comic books. But if they got too racy, my dad pulled those, you cannot see Archie comic books. So I often wonder kind of how parents are dealing with, especially with all the social media, where sex is out there. I grew up in the era of, you were careful of drugs, sex, and rock and roll, mm-hmm. but we had loved comic books and Archie comic books, and that was the extent of it. Oh. So there was no internet, and there was no...
I think it goes beyond that, because it's not just movies and television and oh man, things are more sexual now. I think it's the way our media is constructed. I mean, commercials have sexy ladies on them, and that's the way you sell products, is you sell sex. Even when they're
absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, even when you're selling soap to men, all of a sudden it's the most sexual thing in the world.
The Arby's commercials.
Yeah.
With I can't remember the model, but she would take this obnoxious bite out of this humongous, messy hamburger, have absolutely nothing happen to her face. No sauces is dripping. The burger is still perfectly composed,
right.
And she's in a bikini in a car on the beach, and she's selling a hamburger.
Right. It's totally outrageous.
Right, and that's what I mean. So from this period of the 50s where you couldn't, I mean, Elvis couldn't shake on the television. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm going from, where it's everywhere now. It's subtle. It's in your face.
It's not even subtle though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's from subtle to grand.
Went from
Well,
0 to 100.
Right, exactly. And as a parent trying to manage all of that, even if you're on your kids' technology and you're everywhere, you can't. You have to know all the information that's coming in.
Yeah. And I don't think that the problem is necessarily the media. I think it's the way that people are handling it. I mean, yes, I don't think that we should be using sex to sell things. I think that sexuality should be more celebrated than that. But it's people aren't handling it well. Instead of being upfront about that this is a reality, this is part of the world we live in, this is the way humans are. Instead, people are very squeamish about it. They don't want to talk to their kids about it. They don't want to tell them about their own bodies, and they're not telling them how to do it safely. And that's where a lot of issues come in, is because not everyone's sexuality is the same. Sexuality is something that you need to explore and find yourself, and no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to tell their kids, this is what a condom is, or, you know, this is what happens when you have sex. Like,
Sure.
it becomes awkward and uncomfortable when it really shouldn't be. Yes.
Would you think, I often thought that sexuality is more like on some kind of a continuum, and people always want to say, you're this or you're that, when in reality your life experiences go in and out of this kind of rolling continuum, you know, of activities. And for some reason they want to say, oh, you're a man and you're a woman, and men do this and women do that. You know, you almost, and in reality, I don't know really what a man is. I have my own cultural context that I could put it in. But there are lots of things that women do that could be interpreted as masculine and things that men do that could be interpreted as feminine, if you want to use that language. So the use of that language is particularly problematic, would you say?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have, as a queer black male, I have tendencies towards like the feminine aesthetic or female mannerisms. And it's interesting whenever people who don't know that I am queer up front, whenever I do those things, and then they're just like, that was confusing. Especially when, I'm also polyamorous. I'm dating a woman right now. But then I'll casually say, oh yeah, last week I went on a date with a guy, and I'm also flirting with this other guy, and I'm flirting with this other woman, and people are just like, you're saying lots of things that men generally don't say. What are you? And they want to they need to categorize me because categories are great. Scientifically, we live in a scientific age, post-Enlightenment. So we want to give names to things because giving names and categories to things is useful. But when people like me exist and live very deliberately to break those categories, I induce intrigue in people's lives.
I often, the people talk about the whole movement towards a more positive expectation, the LGBT community and younger people feeling differently than older people. And almost the whole concept of sexuality is almost age defining in many ways. So, and in a sense, your story probably is more common in your category of your age group or whatever you want. Because see, when I grew up, I would never, and we've had a show in which we've talked about this, I would never use the word queer because it had a negative connotation. Yeah. But I noticed that people who identify today embrace the word queer, and even dyke, if you know that. That was another one that was like, don't say that. And even today, I have a little reservation about even saying it, although I could say it here because of the show, but I would never, go out just say, hey, queer friends. It's not a word that usually, I would say gay. That would be a word that sits more in my vocabulary. Yeah. And I wonder how, because it's an interesting thought. I wonder, how did you get to that point where you embrace a word that had such a negative historical connotation for some people, with maybe a large group of people? I don't know. I mean,
Well, I think that it's the community's decision to take a word that is used against them and use it for them, you know? You see that with like a lot of negative words, like they're trying to make slut a more positive word.
okay.
And especially like, what's another good one?
I mean, within the Black community, the N-word.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, well, yeah,
that's-
we
that's,
won't even go there.
Yeah.
Like that's it's
3 other shows altogether.
yeah.
Right.
But
we need a movie to
Yeah.
break down that word.
But I think it's just trying to take something that's very negative and used to hurt people and make it something that's more positive that they can use to identify themselves, you know?
Because most
Yeah.
words are perfectly contextual. Like queer,
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily an offensive word. I like men and women and all of the human beings that exist in between that.
And I think with that, it depends on how you view the word, because any word can, I mean, I can say F you because, you know, like that, but then I can say it in another way that's meant more
Meant
Casually.
differently.
right,
Right.
and
right,
endearing.
exactly. So I think it's how you view it. So is it possible that there's other folks who are what you label queer but don't own the word? And so if someone said that to them,
Would
that
they be
would be
offended? Yeah.
offended.
That
I would say not anymore.
Not anymore.
anymore.
But I don't know. I'm
Well,
not.
but it's also there are some people who just disagree with I guess the linguistic trends in the LGBT queer community. I was on a date with a young gentleman the other week, and he is a trans man.
Explain what a trans man is for the audience.
He was born and assigned female at birth, but then he figured out not a woman, and is he's dealing with that. But he has certain reservations about the queer community borrowing gender neutral terms from other languages. Like a lot of people who identify as non-binary, that's not man or woman, just neither.
What are they, like, neutral?
Yeah, just like they're just human. They don't really identify with
Either of
the
the
masculine
genders.
aesthetic or the feminine aesthetic. They're just
There.
outside of
Yeah,
it.
outside of it.
And a lot of them are borrowing the German terms for neutral. I think it's like Zay, Zier.
Yeah. Zedge. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know them.
it's like XE, XI, and XIR.
Yeah, but there's a whole variety of them. There's
Yeah, there's
Whole
a
new
bunch of
language.
terms.
Whole new language, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that we have to borrow
Yeah.
because English does not have at least popular
Yeah,
gender
that's
neutral
true.
terms other than they and them. And he was explaining that he just disagrees with just like taking these terms from another language,
Right.
just because it's convenient. So
Not to belabor this point, but I wanted to say, you know, in the sense of we don't only use certain language, like the N-word, for example, but that also is a word of affection within the African American community. You can
Yeah.
say, hey. But that's the same way in my culture. You know, I don't like you calling me a dago, but you know, if people in my culture say, hey, dago, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a sign of affection, and I've seen that in other cultures where negative
because-
words for the general culture are really affectionate words among the cultural group.
because
that
you
they're-
share that history.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to I can talk about my mother, but you can't talk about my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
You know?
right.
Right, and knowing where to draw
Well,
that line.
and that's how you would get into a fight with someone. Say, yeah, and your mother, you know, or something like that. But how did this affect your growing up? I mean, because we're kind of a little. I mean, when you were like, I don't know, 12 or 13, like, give me a little progression of what kind of was kind of confusing or not, or
Well,
that would be helpful, I think, to the.
I knew very little about sex. Like the things that I did know about sex were all like secondhand sort of information that'd be like was not good information. And like,
where were you getting this from? Did you have an older sister?
oh
or
no,
what?
I don't have any older
okay.
siblings. I am the oldest. My brother probably knew more about sex than I did because I just was oblivious, living in my own little daydream land. But when I was like 11, I got my period for the first time. Didn't know what was going on.
Yes.
Thought that I was dying, and that was like the first time anyone had thought to tell me anything about sex. And I had like a couple of sex education classes when I was in 6th grade, but they weren't direct. Like they would kind of like talk around things.
Did they talk about the fallopian tubes?
They would talk about like, this is a model of the vagina.
Probably.
And, yeah,
They
and
show
like
you a vagina.
they
Yeah,
show you a
yeah.
diagram and stuff, but they're like, that's not helpful. You know,
Yeah.
your body will change, and you're like, okay, in what way? You know?
I asked that because, I mean, I'm obviously older, more
Yeah.
mature. That's what it was when I was growing up. It was
Yeah.
about the fallopian tubes that did nothing.
Yeah, and they're like, men will also mature, and you're like, okay, and what does that have to do with me? Like, it was just you're getting people that are kind of talking around the point, and they're not really telling you anything valuable, and there's nothing really to hold on to, and then you know your body does start changing, and you have no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't learn exactly how sex worked until I was like at least 14, and it was because someone finally was like, all right, we're going to tell you what condoms are, and this is how they work.
Yeah.
And I like, if I didn't have a friend that was willing to tell me about it, I would never have realized. Now, mind you, I probably could have looked it up online, and I
Sure.
probably could have showed some interest.
So you had
but-
online then. When I was a kid, there
Right.
was no online.
Yeah.
And I told you the story about my father giving me sex education. He handed me a condom.
Yeah.
And the problem, now that I think about it, and this is going to sound weird on TV, I'm sure, is I put the condom on backwards, and it like hurt me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple, but there's like a lot of like little things that you need to know about sex education.
I put it on in reverse, and I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't go on. I mean, it was like very weird, and I didn't want to say anything because now everything down there hurt. You know.
Did you pull it over your testicles too?
No, the next one I blew up and used it as a balloon because I wasn't sure what the hell to do with it. But I mean, it's the kind of thing that happens because no one, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
no one tells you anything.
And like, there's all kinds of things. Like, if you start to put it on the wrong way and then you
Yes.
flip it over and do it the other way, you can get pregnant that way.
Yes.
So you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And like, no one's gonna tell you. Like, I can't tell you how many people have been like, no, you have to throw that one away now. Like, that one's not good.
Right, right.
Well, you know, I grew up in a Catholic school, so you never heard,
Yeah.
you never heard anything at all because of the, you know, I mean, and I hope the Christians out there don't get upset when I say this, but you know, there was the Immaculate Conception, so who knew what was going
Well,
on?
yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Right.
And it wasn't until I grew up where I had Catholic priests or nuns most of my adult education until I went to graduate school. And when I went into graduate, I took a course in human sexuality, and I was totally embarrassed and shocked by the tapes and what was going on because I never had much education about it.
So what did you learn in Catholic schools about sex and?
Not much at all, to be honest
So
with
was
you.
it just more biology? Kinda
More
like
the
fallopian tubes?
biology,
Okay.
but no one ever said, well, you know, this is, I never had a class where someone would say, well, this is the way, you know, you put a condom on and this is what you do and, you know, and this is how you're supposed to have, you know, none
Well,
of that ever happened.
I don't. Even in a biology class, I don't think that's the place to learn.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Like the, I guess the physics of having sex.
Right.
But even in biology classes, like I visited my alma mater a couple months ago, and I want to be a sex educator, ideally, but I was asking them about their sex ed classes because a couple of the students had like just had one, and that's where they had been coming from. So I was just like, have you guys like talked about consent? And they were just like, well, kinda. And I was just like, no, you didn't, because if you actually had a conversation about consent, as soon as I said the word consent, you would have groaned because you would have heard it 50 times in like 10 minutes.
Right.
And like, I was thinking about like my biology education. You know, they show you diagrams of the vagina.
Yeah.
They show you diagrams of the penis, but they don't actually tell you the parts.
Yeah.
Like, they don't show you a diagram of the vagina and say, this little button right here, it's called a clitoris. It's covered by the clitoral hood. It is flanked by the labia minora and labia majora. Like, they don't actually tell you.
Yeah, they don't
They
get
don't.
that
They don't say.
detailed,
They
and
don't
it's
say.
true.
You know, if yours is a little bit uneven, that's fine. They don't tell boys. You know, oh, you know, your testicles are supposed to hang like that. They don't look attractive. They look wrinkly all the time.
Right.
They're affected by what? Like, they don't tell you these things.
Yeah.
Even in
Yeah.
like, even with scientific distance, they still don't tell you these
Yeah.
things.
Right. I was just going to say, from the scientific point of view, it doesn't seem like sex with pleasure, kind
Yeah.
of together,
But
how
like,
they
even sex,
how they meet.
But just the body, they don't explain it to you.
Right.
Like,
They
Yeah.
don't.
like you have a clitoris, you have a penis, you have a urethra. Like,
And they definitely don't want to tell you that it's fun to have sex.
Yeah.
Because then,
Right.
God forbid, you might try it.
you know, what's the clitoris
Well,
for? It is-
accidentally you find out it's fun.
Yeah. They'll
And then
find
you
out
say,
eventually.
oh, this is what they're talking about.
And I think
You know,
that's what
so-
we talked about beforehand, how
Yeah.
I found out my mother died when I was young, and my dad decided that he was not going to tell me about sex, and he gave me credit cards instead.
Right.
And I got pregnant at 15, and his response was, God, I knew we should have talked to you about sex. But it was like, avoid it, and I won't find out.
Yeah.
And it's still so much of that going on, so it's no wonder that adolescents have problems, and they have these issues that they're dealing with society and what their
Yeah.
peers are saying, what they're getting from school, what they're getting, if anything, from home, and having to deal with that.
Well, there are some states that only teach abstinence, and that to
Yes.
me is like just
Wow.
offensive, because you're gonna have sex and you need to teach people how to do it safely. But what you're saying about like you'll find out eventually is what I found was that I heard all these like things about how amazing sex was from watching movies and television
Sure.
and listening to rap music and such, and like not even just like from my friends and stuff. And when I eventually had sex, I was like, this isn't earth-shattering. Like, I'm still the same person. Why did people tell me that losing my virginity would, like, suddenly I'd become some crazy sex demon? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, that's the kind of thing that I had heard, you know, that it was gonna, like, orgasming was, like, moving into another universe. And I was like, no, it's not. It's earthly, you know?
it's very earthy.
So, like, I think, like, that kind of, there's just so much conflicting information, you know? You've got people that are telling you, like, yeah, you should definitely go for it, and, like, sex is awesome, and, like, this is how you should do it. And then there's other people that are, like, never go near it. Like, it is the worst thing. You will always want to have sex. You'll be addicted. Like that's kind of the kind of stuff that people said to me, and it made my decision to have sex the first time incredibly difficult.
Do you mind if I ask you how old were you?
I was 19.
Oh, you were 19.
Yeah. I decided that I wanted to wait to be in love. That was like, wasn't gonna wait for marriage, but I wasn't like gonna throw it away or whatever. Like
Right.
the first guy, I was like, throw it away, right? This is
That's
how I
stereotypical too, you were gonna throw it away.
Just throw it away. So that's how I kind of rationalized it. Was like I wanted to be like in love or whatever, and so I had like a boyfriend that I'd been dating for
Sure.
like 2 months, which at the time I thought was like a big deal. I was like, yeah, 2 months. And I was so nervous that like I was actually shaking, and like he had to like calm me down, and like
So I'm assuming he was not a virgin as well.
he was not a virgin, but like he was very like nice about it, and was very like gentle with me, and was like, okay, we're gonna do this now. Like this is now the next step. Like now we're going on to the next thing. So it was ultimately a positive experience, but I came out of it being like, I don't like, if I hadn't been so nervous, this would have been fine, you know?
Sure.
So like that, I don't know, that to me was a huge wake-up call. Like I came out of this being like, wow, why is this a big deal? Like why was I told all this shit? Why was like there's so much talk about it. It was my own decision, so I don't know why other people are interfering with that. And why are they telling me things that are so completely extreme, you know?
Yeah.
So like, you know, it had a very big influence on me and my decision, and that's why I wanted to make the film that I was working on.
So did you regret that you had
Waited?
waited, or did you regret that you had given it away at that point?
No, I have absolutely no regrets.
Okay.
I have no regrets at all. And I'm actually very glad that I waited until I was a bit older, because I think I was able to reflect on it better and have I was definitely with someone that I was in love with, and I appreciated that. That
Right.
meant a lot to me personally. But I don't think that's for everyone, and I don't think that there should be so much. Other people are different, and if other people were hearing the same things that I was hearing and it was causing me so much anxiety, I can't imagine if you were someone that wasn't, like me. So I just don't think it's healthy, is what I'm coming down to. Is I don't think that the amount of pressure placed on kids is healthy at all.
And have you run across people who are still waiting for either marriage or
Yeah.
by choice?
Yes.
Yeah, I
or
should-
Yes,
know that too,
absolutely. I mean, I have other friends that were also on the same level of anxiety as me. I was one of the first to all right, I'm gonna do this, and they were like, "You had
And all your
sex?"
friends are like,
Yeah, I
And
was
they asked about it,
19.
and then, of course, they didn't.
Yeah, so I can't imagine being younger than I was, because like I said, it was a big. I just,
Yeah.
if you were younger,
But
if you were in high school,
My first sex when I was 14.
Yeah.
And it was an older woman who probably today would have considered she raped me, but
Yeah.
I didn't at the time. She was maybe 17 or 18. I don't know how old she was, and I didn't like it at all. And I went 3 years abstinent. I figured it's better to masturbate. That's what I thought at the time. I said, well, there was no fun in this. I mean, I didn't find it. And it took quite a few years before I got into wanting to have a relationship with someone, because it didn't seem like such a big deal
Yeah.
at the time,
But also, I feel like that has to do with the male experience of sex, because the female body, you literally have a foreign object that is attached to another human being enter you in what is just categorically usually uncomfortable. But males don't. People with penises don't experience that level of discomfort, because this is not how. It's not how the physics of penetration work. When I had sex for the first time with my girlfriend, I was 20. She was in pain. I wasn't. I was just we had a comedy special on the TV, and she was laying down, and I entered, and then I stopped. Everything just stopped. She was just okay, you're gonna stay here for a second. I was just don't worry about it. I'm fine. We can watch TV. So I'm trying to maintain an erection, staying perfectly still.
Complicated thing to do.
Yeah, it is actually. Thinking back on it, trying to maintain an erection while not moving is actually kind of hard.
You have to
pun
almost
intended.
dream to get past that.
Yeah, and still, the first few times, was still very painful for her. So that experience, it was more about me trying to not feel guilty that I'm putting my girlfriend in excruciating pain, and also trying to find enjoyment in an experience that is supposed to be enjoyable.
So, from that perspective, from what I'm assuming male friends had said, rah, 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 go sex,
Yeah.
which is kind of common for guys. What was that like for you to transition to this wasn't a rah, 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 because obviously you were sensitive to
Yeah.
the female, your girlfriend, which is a side that you don't really hear about. It's just rah, rah, rah. So
Yeah.
the fact that did you go back and share that with male friends?
Not really.
Okay.
At least not any other ones that I grew up with.
It's very difficult to share, I think. I mean, maybe you could have a different experience. It's very difficult to share certain intimacies with other men because it gets them funny, like makes them feel
That's why I'm asking,
something
right,
might be
right,
going
exactly.
on sexually with them. You know,
Right.
At least that's been the experience.
Not with the male friends I have now.
Oh, okay, now, but
because I'm grown. So like the male friends that I have now, I'm like, well, if you're uncomfortable with me talking about this, then we can't be friends.
but I mean, when you were an adolescent.
But yeah, when I was an
I would think.
adolescent, I still only had like maybe 2 guy friends with whom I could speak frankly about this issue in a way that was more honest to how I felt about it. That wasn't this, hyper masculine, just like, fuck bitches, get money. Like, that's, most of my friends thought that way, at least like in high school. But when I had sex with my girlfriend, we had been together for like 2.5 years. And when we entered in the relationship, we were both of the opinion that we were going to wait until marriage. Now, granted, I lost my virginity when I was 13. And when I say lost my virginity, because I think people with penises lose their virginity when they have an orgasm, when they have an ejaculatory orgasm. So I had my first one of those when I was 13. I was having oral sex with another young boy because I was at away camp for the first time, and everything happens at away camp if you go to away camp.
Don't tell me that my daughter went to a away camp. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear that.
Your daughter's probably got to
It all starts in camp.
basically. If you go to away camp, you probably did some stuff at away camp. Your daughter probably did some stuff.
No,
she's probably fine. She's probably fine.
That's why my mom wouldn't let me go, and I was so mad.
Your mom was
Your mom wouldn't let you go?
Your mom was right. So like the first time I had a blowjob, the first time I came was with this other guy. I think he was 14, and it was really interesting. His name was Xavier, and as we were doing stuff, he would repeat like a lot. We're not gay, right? Like he would say that over and over again. We're not gay. We're not gay, and I'd be like, fine. Like so what? Like, just come here.
Did that enter your thought, gay, straight, or anything like that? His thought.
I knew that I wasn't straight.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, the way he would repeat, we're not gay, means that he was probably going through some.
He was still processing.
Yeah, he was
the
processing
info.
his identity
Right.
and his sexuality and like the sexual activity
Right,
that he was
right.
getting into. But yeah, I was fine. I was just like, no, like put your penis in my mouth. It feels great.
Right.
And the first time I came, I didn't know what was going on, and like it happened, and then I just like ran away and went to bed. Like I was in his bed and we were doing the thing, and then it happened, and I was just like, I was really confused and I was scared because I didn't know. Like I thought I peed. Like I was just like, but it's like not pee. And I was just like, I don't know what happened. It was dark. Like I didn't see anything. I was just like, I don't know what happened. So I just like ran away and like didn't talk to him the next day. It was a sort of very quintessential sexual experience. It was like it happened and then you don't want to talk to the person the next day. It's just like, why didn't you call me back? I don't know. Like,
So is there something there about having sexual relations when you are at that age versus when you were 19?
Well, I mean, I had other sexual experiences, and I mean, like, I had several with several different people. I think the thing was that I felt somehow that penetration was special, and that's what defined me as a virgin, even though I had been with other people, I'd orgasmed before, I'd done almost everything else. And that's like, I thought that, like, in retrospect, that's completely ridiculous to think that that was my, like, losing my virginity, because, I mean, it was not my first sexual experience at all.
Right, so, and my daughter's like 28, so I definitely went through that with her, with the whole, her and her peers at the time in high school and even in college with their definitions of sex was,
Yeah.
then I'm going, it's not just penetration. You have oral sex. You have all of these different,
Or
you know,
anal
you're
sex
messing
or
around first
whatever.
base,
Yeah.
third base, whatever it is. That's still sexual activity. And having this dialogue with
Some
her and
people
her
actually
peers.
just separate them all out.
Right.
I mean, you
right.
know,
But as a parent, it was very challenging to communicate that with her because they were of the same mind. Well, I didn't have intercourse yet.
right.
Right.
So I'm not, and I'm going.
I mean-
yeah, no,
See, I
don't
wonder
think-
if that's an age distribution story where in our age group, or mine and yours,
Right.
anal or oral sex was still considered sexuality.
Right.
You know, and you know, virginity was just one other aspect of the sexuality. But there does seem to be, at least in your presentation, it's like it was sex and all, but it wasn't. I still had my virginity.
Yeah, I think the reason for that was because I wanted to do things and
okay.
I was not saying no, but I was giving myself wiggle room
Sure.
to like between where like I was saying like, oh, I'm still pure, I'm still a virgin, I still have like this thing that like makes me special or whatever that I can give to whoever I fall in
Whomever,
love
yeah.
with. But at the same time, like I'm giving myself like I can go and make out
yourself
with
wiggle room.
someone. Yeah, I'm giving myself tons of wiggle room, you
Sure.
know? So it's like that's, I think it's a way of like coping with it. It's like, oh well, it's not really sex, you know? But in retrospect, that's completely ridiculous. You know, it sounds ridiculous.
Right, no, I definitely went through that with my daughter. My daughter actually called me because we had an open, because my sex education was so far left. We had an open conversation. And so she called me at work one day and said, so I want to share something with Renee, which was code for, oh God, she wants to talk to Renee. Oh my God. But that was our code. She can talk to Renee, and mommy wouldn't listen.
Right.
So whenever she said I have something to talk to Renee about, it was like, oh my God. So she called me at work and said, I just wanted to tell you, because I told you I would always tell you, that I'm not a virgin anymore. I lost my virginity. And then she proceeded to tell me there were roses on the bed and on the floor. And I'm going, no, I don't want to hear this anymore. But I mean, it was still the PG version, and I knew the young man and they were dating, but it's one of those things that you say you want to know. I hung up
You
the
don't
phone.
really hear.
And I literally must have
mother,
been
I guess.
standing in pace. My boss walked by and said, Renee, are you okay? And I said, my daughter just called to tell me she lost her virginity. And she was like, oh, honey, go home. You're not going to be any more good to me for the rest of the day. And I wasn't, but it was like, no, I don't want to. But she called and told me, you know, I had sex for the first time. And she was 19.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss of words. Just
my,
Well, you
my,
know,
my sister did not have that experience. My older sister was dating her boyfriend for, I want to say, 2 years. She was a junior in high school. She was like 17. The way my mother found out that they had sex was they found the condom wrapper in my grandmother's bedroom. And my mother had my sister and I rather young. When my mother found out that my sister had sex by finding the condom wrapper, she called my sister a slut, which I was like 10, 11. And even then, I was confused. I was just like, I don't think my mother knows what that word means. And still today, my mother doesn't know what that word means. Or maybe she does, because she, has calmed down about it, especially having a queer child. But like when she reacted that way, I was still very confused. I was just like, you found a condom wrapper. Like, why are you mad? Like, she used the condom and she had sex with the boy that you've met so many times.
and she was in a safe environment.
And she was in her grandmother's house. Like among the scenarios a parent should get upset about in the context of their child losing their virginity, I felt like that was like the one that you can't be upset. Like, that you can't be angry about. Like, you can, like, be concerned. You can be like, why'd you do this? You know, you can threaten to kill them, but, you're not going to. They're fine. And, like, she just made my sister feel really guilty.
I was
like,
just going to say, how did that impact
like,
your
I
sister
remember,
then and
I remember
now?
my sister was in her room, like, crying her eyes out, like, praying to God for forgiveness. And I was just like, because she's a very, very good Christian woman. And so, like, she's praying to God for forgiveness. I was like, forgiveness for what? Like, Mom had you at what age again? Like,
Right.
like you're definitely ahead of the curve in terms of where Mom was. Like why was my mom reacting this way? It just seemed very bizarre. And then after my experience with Xavier, like, I told my mother that I was bisexual, like, after that summer. And she said, no, you're not. And I had no reason to doubt my mother when she said words. So when she said that I wasn't, I believed her. Even though I told her, it's like, yeah, I had a crush on this guy at summer camp. I didn't tell her that. I did the things. I just said I was really attracted to this guy. I was just like, I think I'm bisexual. She was like, no, you're not. And so then I spent like 5 years like being straight, which didn't work out because I wasn't.
And did she let you go back to away camp?
No, I never went back to away camp. No. That was away camp was one and done. But I did go to an all-boys school. Yeah, which was also very difficult because, like, I'm, according to my mother, not bi, but I'm surrounded by all these men who I have feelings for, obviously, but, I'm not bi, like, because my mother said so, and I have no reason to doubt my mother, because obviously she knows me. I came out of her. If there would be a person who knows me pretty well, it would be her. But at a certain point, like, I had to realize, oh yeah, my mother's not me though. I may have come from her, but she's not me, so she can't know me more intimately than I do.
So how was that process from the time she said, no, you're not, to the point that you...
It was very tumultuous.
Well, it actually goes to an issue. If you reflect on his adolescence, it goes to an issue of why parents need to be more understanding and accepting of difference,
Yeah.
and not judging a certain activity one way or the other, because see how it influenced him for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, like at a certain point, I had to come out to myself first, because like I was very, very hyper masculine during high school, at least in terms of my relationship with women, because we had an all boys school and then we had an all girls school down the street, with whom we shared like classrooms and some classes. So like I would be like pretty aggressive in the way I approached females, and that whole like rah 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 sexuality, like sex type mentality, because I was surrounded by guys all day, and so like it was like 5 years from like 7th grade to like 11th grade where I was just like super straight acting. And then junior year of high school, we had like cultural day, and one of the events, I think at the end of the day, we were all in the auditorium, and it was like an identifying exercise. It was like stand up if you're black, stand up if you're white, stand up if you're whatever. And it was the first year they had included stand up if you are, not straight, if you're not heterosexual.
Wow.
And like
That's
I
an
was one of the,
interesting thought that they did
and
that.
like I was like one of the first. I was a part of the group that stood up that said, "Oh yeah, hey guys, we're the queers," and like we were all standing together too. So they was just like, "Oh, it seems like they knew among themselves," and everyone else was surprised. It was just like, "Oh right, they exist in our school. They're here."
Oh yeah,
They're here, they're queer.
exist.
And they're probably here to stay.
In that 5-year period when you were being masculine,
Yeah.
as you say, during your adolescence, were your thoughts still somewhere else, even though your
Yeah.
behavior
Yeah.
was right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fairly. I mean, you hear that a lot. I asked you. I didn't want to put it into your mind,
No.
but people would say, "Yeah, I was masculine for 5 years," but I often said, "Gee, you know, I really do like men," or whatever it would be.
Right.
And you're just afraid to almost act on it because of culture.
There was this one guy who I had a stupid crush on, and never, because he was beautiful and he was after a while I did tell him. He never responded, but I was just like, I feel like I should like let you know, like you were my high school crush, like
Right.
my actual one. Like, you know, I did stuff with all these other people, but like eyes were on you because you're a beautiful human being and we should have been together. But
It's like an intellectual class.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can even come out of your own intellect and
Right, right.
express
Yeah.
it.
But
And
like,
that's-
once I came out, like everybody was just like, yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah,
I can see that.
and it was just like really freeing. It was like really nice. I was just like, yeah, you know, sorry, I had to like kind of fake it. for a
And
couple
how did
years.
that translate home?
It didn't. So I came out to like myself and my friends like junior year of high school. I came out to my mother after my freshman year of college, and when I came out to my mother, she was like, "Well, what if I'm uncomfortable?" And I was just like, "That's a bullshit thing to say." And then I left. Like I left home. Like I moved out. I called my friend, and I was like, "Yo, Charles, I need a place to stay." And his mom came and picked me up. He like packed up all my shit. Like I didn't even tell my mom that I was leaving. Like I was just like packed up all my shit and left. And then like I went back to school. Like I was still at school, still in school at that point. And like we just like didn't talk. Like my mother and I did not
year?
talk.
Did you talk with
We only started really talking again like last year. And that was only because, well, 2 years ago now. And that was only because I had left school, and like, you know, the circumstances required that my mom know that I was leaving school, and like so that circumstance kind of threw us back together, and she kind of like had to come to grips. It's like, oh yeah, my child is queer, but also he's my child, and I did a really good job raising him. So the fact that he might be attracted to men sometimes doesn't really matter because he's an Ivy Leaguer and he pays his own bills, and you know
When
he's
you were-
smart as shit.
When
so-
you were on, you mentioned earlier that you were at the University of Penn, I think. And,
Yeah.
You've taken a hiatus right now and going back eventually. Was it welcoming at the university?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I say that because I
mean-
graduated from there myself, and I was wondering because I always thought it was there.
yeah. The underground term for the University of Pennsylvania is the University of Pennsylvania because of the Jewish, gay, and Asian populations there.
Yeah,
A
a little different than the
sorry
Hillel
guys.
Society.
Sorry guys, I outed you. And so yeah, it was great there.
Yeah.
Most of my, I guess, problems as a queer black male at the University of Pennsylvania were just straight personal. Like, and that was just because of you know, rampant homophobia in the black community. Primarily. Like I remember I was flirting with this young black woman because I did a program before starting at Penn. So like we all met on campus and like we took like pre-classes, I guess. And I was flirting with her for a couple days, and then I like going to Penn. I decided, you know, everyone was going to know up front, like who I am. I'm a nerd. I'm queer. Like you're going to know everything. Might as well not hold back. I'm starting fresh, right? And so I remember telling this woman, "Oh yeah, I'm bi," and she was just like, "Oh really? Well, like no, like it's not. Like we can't be a thing." And I was just like, "Why not?" She was just like, "Oh, I don't mess with bi dudes." So I was just like, "Why not?"
Missing
like
out.
yeah, give me the reason. And she said, "Well, I don't feel like secure in our relationship if you're like looking at other dudes? And I was just like, well, that doesn't make sense. Because
It's okay for me to look at other women?
yeah, like if I was straight, I was
Well,
if
'cause
I,
I think
and
it
I'm
has
and
an
I'm in a relationship, I shouldn't be looking at other human beings, period, no matter how large my population of attraction is.
I think it has a lot. This is my thought. I think that thought has a lot to do with, like, if you're with another woman and she's with you, that's like more tolerable to the other woman. But if you're
Yeah.
over there with guys, and it's almost like
Something
a
you
different
don't
kind of
have.
competition.
Right.
I don't know how exactly to express
yeah.
it. I don't know
I
if
mean,
that
Because
makes
it's
any
like-
I can't
sense.
compete with it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's does that
It's like
make
I could be better than that other girl, but I don't have a penis, and I couldn't do
be
those
better
things.
than that guy?
Yeah, I couldn't be better than that guy. That being
guess.
said, though, you could always hop down to the sex shop.
That's
Oh
true.
yeah.
Pick
and
yourself up.
Strap it on.
You can
Just
buy
saying.
one.
Yeah.
Capitalism
Just
is
You can
amazing.
buy
saying.
one that will always be erect.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it. You can get it at whatever size you want.
yeah.
And color. And color.
And
And
color.
All you gotta do is clean it. All you gotta do is
Yeah,
wash it.
you know, if you get a nice one, you can just boil it and you're done.
Exactly. It's great.
They even heat them up and stuff.
Yeah, you know.
I don't want
Get
to
a
go too
vibrator
nuts
one.
here with this story. But does any of this make sense from your experiences in school?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say that I had a lot of issues with my self-confidence just in general because, and I mean, I blame this a lot on the fact that I'm a girl, but that might not have everything to do with it. But like, I had a lot of self-confidence issues and like being overly polite, not being able to assert myself, that kind of stuff. And when I came to school, to college, it was like suddenly demanded of me to be self-confident and to like approach people myself and not be always apologizing for everything that I did. And it was like probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I still struggle with it because it's like there's a certain expectation for the way that ladies act. And I don't necessarily act that way, but there's like, you have to be polite all the time. You have to be the like docile, like calm one that's going to be the stereotypical woman. And like, I'm me as a person, I know I'm not that way. And if it wasn't put on me, I know that like I wouldn't act that way at all, but it is on me, you know? And
interesting that
I'm
you say
very
that, Adrian.
conscious of it.
When I would think you're like in what, 22?
Yeah, I'm 22.
See, I would expect maybe Renee maybe to feel that way because of her age experience. Not that Renee would be that way, but interestingly enough, I would think that young
Yeah.
women would have gotten kind of past that, but obviously
But
not.
it-
No,
No.
I was that way.
Yes.
And then domestic violence entered into my life. So
Right.
folks look at me and say, "Now, well, you don't seem like a victim of domestic violence. Like there's a victim."
But you have
because
to
we know
grow.
there's not.
Yeah.
But I would say, well, that Renee wasn't because I was that person. But because of the brutality that was forced upon me, this Renee emerged.
Yeah.
Which is more never again in full defensive mode all the time.
Right.
But that was who I was.
I meant then. I'm talking about when you were an adolescent.
Right. When I was an adolescent, that's
Yes.
who I was.
And
That's exactly
So to
what,
hear
one of the
from Caitlin, it's like, gee, you almost think that there's a generational like movement away from that thought,
You would think so.
but it's still there.
but it's still there. And I mean,
But you know what? And I think I've raised my daughter like that. Like if you
Yeah.
asked her, what did your mother want you to be when you grew up? And she would tell you she wanted me to be a nice person. So consequently, as she's 28 and she's job hunting and she's doing different things, she has this moral code, this moral fiber,
Yeah.
and people have to be nice, and it has to be something that's pure and something genuine about it. But she was raised by a feminist.
yeah.
But I still want her to be a nice person. That's what I want you to see first. So she struggles with some of the same things
Yeah.
where I don't have to be, she'll say, like my mother, in your face all the time and Uber. I'm still strong, but she struggles with that, trying to be a decent human being, but needing to be rah, rah, rah in your face. Is that kind of sum it up some?
I mean, I have a lot of issues because I'm in leadership positions a lot. And I didn't grow up in leadership positions. I had I had barely any experience with that. And I was not that I wasn't a leader, but I felt that I had to be like, I'll step back, type thing. And now I'm doing these putting myself in positions where I am someone that needs to be in charge, and I don't necessarily have all the skills, and I'm a girl, and so people are looking at me and saying she doesn't have the skills just because, and I'm also tiny, but also I don't necessarily have the skills because I mean, it's something I have to work on every single day, you know? I mean, I had a guy tell me that he thought I was lying to him, and I wasn't being honest with him about something because I had been so polite to someone else. Like, I had been so nice about the way that I had let someone down that he was like, "You're definitely lying to me about this." And I was like, "What?" No, that's not the case. But
I don't think that's how that works.
But
No, I
it's
agree.
it's
Yeah,
still
doesn't.
this double standard. If you're a
Yeah.
woman and you're tough in business, you're a bitch. Plain and simple. Versus I can't be strong, be the same as a male counterpart where he's a smart business person, he's decisive.
But you're
without being
trying
that.
to what I've been really focusing on, and I've been reading a lot of leadership books and stuff, is being someone that people can go to, and you'll be able to help them, and they'll be able to help you, and you appear strong instead of necessarily someone that's in charge or the boss. You're, or a bitch. So but it's a struggle, and it's something I struggle with it in my dating life. I struggle with it in my work life. I struggle with it everywhere. It's part of it is because I'm aware of it now, and so now it's something that I have to deal with. But I mean, when I look back at the way I was in high school and the lack of confidence that I had, and how it put me at risk of being in abusive relationships, because I had people approaching me and I didn't know how to deal with it. So it's something that's always affected me. It's just now I'm aware of it.
And that's I had people approaching me when I was going from transitioning through and growing up, and even at where I am in life now, I struggle with this strong persona and massaging my gentle side. I thought I was easy breezy for a lot of years, and my partner, my daughter would go, "There is nothing easy breezy about you." So when I think that I'm being easy breezy, they're going, "That was the harshest thing I ever heard."
Yeah.
So I'm working on the opposite of trying to kind of bring those things out, because what I think are, I'm just saying something nice and they're going, "Oh, that was bad, that was harsh."
Yeah, I have that struggle too. I also think it might come from our blackness, because when I work in food service. So when I tell customers to do something, when my coworkers tell people to do something, especially my white female coworkers, who are all of my bosses, they're also tiny. Whenever they try to wrangle the customers, people will ignore them just flat out.
Yeah.
When I say something, "Hey guys, we need everybody to people move."
I have the same thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was just me, my special personality.
No, they see the melanin and they move.
You think it's the color
I
that's affected by it?
Generally, I
could
think
agree with that. I could see that.
I think it's that, because whenever my coworkers, I can also just be assertive. I'm just good at that. So whenever my coworkers need somebody to do something, they're just like, "Dom, can you repeat?" And I'll be like, "Got you."
Very interesting. We can continue on forever and ever and ever. But, we're going to have to end for today. So, well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I want to thank my guests, Dominique and Caitlin, for joining me today, and of course, my co-host, Renee. And I want to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. You have been watching the Tapestry of Life on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services. See you next time.